So getting this started, introductory remarks. Today we're going to focus on the APA PsycTests database and specifically on the PsycNet platform. That said, we always like to remind everybody that when you're using an APA database, whether that's PsycInfo or PsycTests, um, it's the same data no matter which platform you're on. So whether it's PsycNet, Ovid, EBSCO, or ProQuest, you're getting the same searchable fields, the same number of records, the same PDFs. The main difference is just sort of layout and design of the page and where different labels might be. And here's the scope of what we're actually covering. So I have exactly 2 slides that sort of overview psych tests and talk about what content is in there, what are the searchable fields, some user example scenarios. We'll spend most of the time doing actual search demos in the platform. 3 major ways you can begin accessing psych tests from the PsycNet platform. So we'll go through all of that. We have a couple slides in the middle outlining what the permissions statement actually means. Permissions is kind of a big deal when we're trying to use someone else's psych test. And then at the end, we'll have kind of the wrap up slides, a bunch of links for you to take with you that deal with psych tests information and training, as well as just a couple other highlight bullet point links about what's new with APA databases overall. So what exactly is APA PsycTests? It's focused on test and measures, as the name implies. You may be familiar with other types of research databases where the records focus on journal articles or book chapters or other types of publications. What APA PsycTest is doing is trying to sort of pull out and highlight some of the tests that these researchers have created and used and analyzed in the literature. Most of them are not commercially available. Most of them are not very famous, right? We have 78,000 tests. Some of them have been used in research maybe once, maybe twice, but they might be very relevant for the current set of researchers if you're on a similar topic. Sort of avoid reinventing the wheel or starting from scratch. See what tests already exist in the research literature. So psych tests makes them a little more discoverable. You can search using much more specific test related fields instead of having to rely on an articles type search. And we list a few user scenarios here as well. And the APA Psych test is updated every month. It provides a bit of a historical collection with our oldest tests from the late 1800s, but of course the records are being added at an accelerated rate as academic publishing output increases and we get closer to the present day. So this next slide is sort of just highlighting what are those unique database fields, right? What are the data points that you can search by and that you will see in the descriptive record? Everything here that's in bold is for psych tests specifically, and that's more than half of the fields, right? So if you look at the unbolded ones, you're going to see things like author or age group or keywords that you might find in any kind of database. But we have special fields related to just tests here. Similar to our other APA databases, this descriptive record and these searchable fields are a combination of our professional staff indexers as well as free text fields being provided directly from the author's own words in their publication. So you might see me mention that a few times in the demo as well. This combination of indexing plus author supplied free text to sort of have the best of both worlds, make it a powerfully effective search as well as a very informative record. So, for example, some of the lists here, like test methodology or instrument type, APA staff has devised basically a standardized list of labels or possible values. So you just need to pick the one that sorts from a drop down list. And that's a very quick and accurate way to limit your search. So that works for, again, the fields like methodology or instrument type. On the other hand, we have fields like factors and subscales or reliability, where they're a little more just like they can contain more possible values based on how the author described their own work. Okay. So again, a reminder that if you're searching psych tests, you'll have the best experience if you select it on its own. When we're searching all these databases that are from the APA collection, or even more so if you're searching, in a discovery layer with content from many, many different publishers, you're going to get sort of a more standard list of fields, things that tend to apply to articles and book chapters, right? But if I say, show me just psych tests, now you see this list is including things like test construct and purpose and source documents, things that are focused on the test itself. And again, down here, we see these filters are also now specific to tests. There's the instrument type, supporting documentation, administrative method, things like that. So yeah, same if you're used to using PsycInfo on PsycNet, similar layout, but with just psych tests, we have the more specific fields we can focus on. So one extremely useful filter is permissions. Sometimes I'll call it the permissions statement. Um, so this is again an instance where the APA indexers are doing some upfront work, try to make your research experience a little smoother. The easiest permissions for the end user, the researcher, such as yourselves and the people you work with, is going to be may use for research teaching. If you see that permissions statement in the psych test record, then you know that you can basically immediately implement that test either in classroom instruction or when conducting your own research. You're not going to have to reach out to anybody to ask when you see this permission statement. So we'll say in this example, this is an instructor. They're teaching a course that's either maybe test development or methodologies or psychological statistics. And they're trying to find a test that they can use in the classroom quickly, this week, maybe tomorrow. So in that case, you'll want this permissions statement. This means you can basically use the test right away without double checking. The other best field for quick use of a psych test is going to be to select test available. Um, about half of the psych test records include a PDF that lists all of the test items. So this experience is kind of, psych test is a little bit like halfway between the full text database like psych articles and the indexing focused database like PsycInfo. It's kind of, some of the records are more indexing while other records are providing full text. And that's the way to make sure you're able to get the PDF directly from psych tests right away. So test available, permission statement. This is always a good way to begin a search, again, if you're trying to use something immediately. And now that this is set up, we can start talking about actual content. So I can select here to add another search filter, and I'm going to go pick test methodology. This is a completely different methodology field than what you might be using in PsycInfo. This methodology is not going to say, case studies or literature reviews. This methodology is all about statistics. It's unique to psych tests again. So you see it has test validity, more specific types, reliability, factor analysis, and then a few other data and statistics tools as well, right? So if I'm an instructor, maybe I want to focus on a particular type of psychometrics this week. I can go ahead and select a couple of my imaginary instructors' favorites. Um, you can hold down the control key to select multiple values. And the more you select, the more results you have. That's true for any of these filter boxes. Selecting more is going to mean show me either or. Um, so if you're open to multiple values, that will make your results set bigger. Okay, so we set ourselves up for success, finding an easy to use test. We've set up our favorite psychometrics, also called test methodologies. And then the final step is going to be to actually add the search concept. Excuse me. I find that test construct is the best topic search to use when you're in psych tests. Um, in PsycInfo, you might be using keywords or thesaurus terms, but test construct is basically like in a phrase or a word, what is this test about? What is it trying to measure? So we have that special test construct fields to help you quickly get at tests that are truly about your desired topic. So for this example, we'll say self concept. And now we run our search. Okay, and again, up at the top is a summary of everything we've searched for so far. On the results page, it's the default sorted by newest. Also, that works for us in this case. Some of the filters from the advanced search page are over here again. For example, age group. We could have set this up on the advanced search page, but in this case, so we wanted to make sure we were getting some results before we filtered it down further. So I can select adulthood. You see there's also more specific types of adulthood, young adult 30s, middle aged, and older. There's also the option for childhood and adolescence, and those broken down further as well. But I'll just select age group for now. And you'll see in this search results list that every record has a PDF file that says test. And that's how that limiter worked for us, that every result we're seeing has the PDF test included. I'm going to do another pause for questions before I open up the record. Make sure everybody understands sort of how we moved from advanced search to search results and how we use the different values that we chose. Okay, then let's dive right in. What kind of person am I? So this is our psych test record. This test profile has all those descriptive fields we've been talking about. You also see that right at the top is linked to the PDF when it's available. So every test PDF starts with this one-page cover sheet. And then if you scroll down a bit, you'll see the actual questions. In this case, we also see a note about how these items can be scored. We also see near to the top the source used. Majority of metadata for this record comes from a PsycInfo record. So as I had mentioned earlier, PsycTest is sort of trying to draw out some of those research measures that were lost in the literature. So basically every PsycTest record has this very close tie to a publication, often a journal article. Sometimes you might see a dissertation, a book chapter, or a type of gray literature, say government report that has a test mentioned in it. So, where all this information came from, it's available in the full text of this journal article. This journal article has a PsycInfo record, but our indexers have also gone on and created a record that's just specific to the test. It's including a lot of these details that there really wasn't a space for in the PsycInfo record. But anytime you're working with a test and measure, you can always look for the source used. Follow the DOI, follow the PsycInfo link to get information, a little more context about how this test was actually used in the journal where it was first published. Okay, so we have the full text, we have the link to the closely related journal article publication. And what are these special fields for the test itself, right? So we're starting with the construct up here. You see it's highlighted because this is one of our searched terms. Up at the top, you get a good overview of the test in these three fields: construct, purpose, and description. So basically, what is the test about? Construct tells you in a word, purpose tells you in a sentence, and then description tells you in a paragraph. This description is the closest thing to an abstract that you'll find in a psych tests record. So scrolling down a bit more, we see that permission statement we were searching for author identifier. This can be useful in case you have any questions about the test. Um, I'll say it now and I'll say it again later. Anything APA knows about the test is included in the record. Sometimes people will email into us and ask a question, and I'm like, if we knew, it would be in the record. We're not sitting on a wealth of hidden information related to the test, but the author very well might be. So we include the author emails, the affiliations, and then also the ORCID IDs. This is the information at the time the test was published, but for older tests, we do try to provide the ORCID when we can in case people have sort of moved and have new professional email addresses. Scrolling down a bit more, test location. So this is a kindness. If you end up going into the full text of that related article from source used, it tells you where in the related article you'll find the test. In this case, we have the PDF already. But in cases where the PDF's not here, you will get the DOI of the published article as well as the location when we have it. So if you're looking for it in its full text article context, it kind of tells you exactly where in the record you can be checking. Factors and subscales are here. So these are pulled out and reported the way that the author described them in that article. So this can be useful for browsing here. So in self concept, these are some of the smaller factors within that. It's also a searchable field. So if you were searching for one of these phrases in a sort of more general psych tests, any field search, good employee characteristics or good employee, maybe there's no test that exactly matches good employee, but you can see that this test has some questions that group together to create this type of measure anyway. So when you search now, you're able to get a hit on the concept, on the test name, but also in these factors and subscales. Okay, down a bit further, reliability, validity, and factor analysis. Again, these were the phrases that we picked from test methodology over here. So searching test methodology is sort of efficient. You know that it's going to be the same label applied every time. This finds you the articles that you're looking for, or the test records, I should say, that you're looking for, if test methodology is important to you. But it also includes more information here based on what the author reported, right? So that's the way that the indexing plus the author's free text are working together. One helps you find the record quickly, and the other gives a little more detail once you're in the record. Scrolling down a bit more, in this case, age group and population group are pretty standard. But for psych test records, you'll also see population details. And those are often much more specific. So we see this was not just adults, but it was university students from Finland. Okay, if there are no questions, I'm going to go back to the slides and talk a little bit more about permission statements and what they mean and what different types of permissions labels you might see, right? So as a reminder, permissions is available. You get the statement here in the record. You can see a longer permission statement on the front page of the test PDF. So right there, going back to results, you can limit by permissions on this search results page, and you also can limit on the advanced search page, which is what we did. So it's pretty easy to search by permissions and to spot permissions in PsycTests. And we're going to go ahead and jump back to the slides for a moment. Um, Myself and Patty, who's here with me, keeping an eye out for any questions you may have. Um, we both get a lot of questions about permissions in psych tests since we're both training and support specialists. We do these webinars, we hear your questions here, but we also see the kinds of questions that come into our inbox from both librarians and sometimes from student end users. Um, so I just wanted to have a moment to talk about permissions, and how APA can help you figure them out. But there's also a lot that you can do on your own without needing to ask APA for help. So again, just a quick overview, a little screenshot of permissions and the 5 possible values that you can see. And I turned those values into a little pie chart. So you can see that almost half are going to be may use for research instruction. The next most common kind by far is contact author. So together, that's almost the whole pie between may use and contact author. The two smaller slices are going to be contact publisher and contact both. And the final little permissions case, not specified, is extremely rare. It's only about 1 in 450 records. So you may well never stumble upon it, even if you are an avid psych test user. So acknowledge that it's there, but it's unlikely that you're going to find many records that use that permission. So let's start with our best case scenario. You found a psych tests record that you love, it's very relevant, and you see that may use for research or teaching. That's great. Basically, this means you have permissions to use that test in the same way that you would use a research article, right? Bring it to class, cite it in your own work. Share it with a research colleague. That's fine. Basically, don't plagiarize, don't post it on the open internet, and don't charge people a fee to take the test. Don't use it for commercial gain. You can use it in a clinical setting, right? So, most, basically the ways that you could use another journal article PDF are the ways you can use the psych tests PDF. Again, when you see this may use for research or teaching, you can go ahead with basic research and instruction use. So this is a great situation. Permissions in your use case are all lined up in green light, and you don't need to ask about permissions. On the other hand, things that will not be permitted. So again, you can save some time by not asking because the answer would be no. Don't post the test publicly online. Don't pass the test off as your own work. Don't sell the test, right? Don't charge people a fee to give them the test that was developed by somebody else, right? These are the things that permission statements will not allow. So that's pretty straightforward. Green light, red light use. Um, Yellow light is a little more, you have to pay attention. The most common yellow light scenario is for any permission statements, if you want to actually republish the test, then you're going to need to ask permission from the publisher. So, regardless of what the psych test record says, if you want to not just publish results using the test, but if you want to include the entire test items in your own appendix of your own published work, you're going to have to ask permissions for that. So that's why this is a yellow light. Go ahead once you have the permissions. Also, if the permission statement is going to say contact publisher or it's going to say not specified, that's a situation where you will need to contact the publisher even before some of the green light activities. Um, the publisher can be found easily in the psych tests record. They're in that source document used. The DOI that leads back to the original publication, that's the publisher, that's the copyright owner. Um, a lot of people think that APA is the copyright owner of the test, and that's not true. We're basically indexing with permission. So if this is confusing, yellow light permissions, you can always write into us and we can help advise on the best way to handle things. But just so you know, if something is a little unclear and you need to check with the copyright, you can find the copyright holder easily by using that publisher's DOI. Most of the time, it is not APA. We're happy to steer you in the right direction. But just the sort of understanding that unless the unless that source document happens to be an APA journal, we're not the copyright holder, and you're usually going to have to contact someone else for these yellow light scenarios. Pausing here for a moment, is this making sense so far about permissions and what exactly it covers? Oh, thank you guys for actually being in the chat. I know you're listening. This feels good. Um, we'll also briefly touch on the second most common permission statement, which is contact author. As we saw, there's a lot of information about the main author and the additional authors, how you can contact them, affiliation. So if permissions say contact author, you'll need to do that before you do any greenlight activities. You may also want to contact the author for reasons beyond permission. As we said, APA is not sitting on secret information about the test, but the author probably is. If you need more guidance on administrating the test or scoring or the test items or really any questions, most authors are delighted that somebody else wants to use the test that they worked so hard on, and will be able to, reply and engage with you in that way. Okay, so that was the end of our brief permissions intermission. Okay, so we are moving back into PsycNet. Looks like right where we left off. Let's go back to the advanced search page. So for this second scenario, we're going to say that I'm a student and I'm doing some research, maybe an undergrad, maybe a capstone project. I've been using PsycInfo and PsycArticles primarily so far. But I'm starting to get a little curious about some of the tests that are being mentioned in the articles, right? I'm finding some of those sources of tests, and I'm curious to learn more about them. So for this example, we are actually going to start in PsycInfo. Um, First demo, we started on the PsycTests advanced search. For this demo, we're going to start in PsycInfo and use that to work our way into PsycTests because of the ways the test records and the source records are linked together. You can start in either database and then kind of move your way into the other. And again, as a student, I'm more likely to start in PsycInfo than go immediately into tests. So here we go. I have a very particular record I want to show you because I was excited about it. So we're going to find that one. Starting out with our thesaurus search for PsycInfo, I'm going to select personality theory. There we go. Adding to search. So I've got regular old PsycInfo index term from the thesaurus search. But what I'm going to do now is scroll down to a special PsycInfo field that's called tests and measures, right? So when you're in PsycTests, you have like 30 different fields that all relate to the test. In PsycInfo, we have one. There is one field that lists the names of the tests that were used in the research. So I'm going to say, I want to find tests that are about either resilience or resilient. So I'm looking for a publication about personality theory that also includes a test with resilience in the name. So we run that search. We find what I'm looking for, personality factors and trait resilience. So this is a journal article so far, right? PsycInfo, scrolling down this record to find our psych tests field. So here we go. This particular publication used a ton of tests and measures. The ones that have the DOIs means that they're available in psych tests. So what I'm looking for now is the tests and measures that have resilience in the name and also have a DOI. So we've got several options. I'm going to go ahead and open up this Resilience Research Center and also the Connor Davidson Resilience Scale, right? So I'm in PsycInfo. I found the one field related to tests and measures. This has clued me into the names of some psych test records that I might want to explore more deeply. When I select the DOI page, it takes me right to the psych test record. And I've opened two of them in a new tab. Um, so if this was a school that had psych info but not psych tests, you would be taken to a very short landing page. You would basically see like the name of the test and the construct purpose description, but you wouldn't get a lot of data and you definitely wouldn't get any full text PDFs. Um, so just in this example, we're pretending that the school has access to psych info as well as psych tests, and that's how I can move smoothly between them. Hi, Kelsey. Excellent question. I'm going to show that now. There are several ways that you can utilize the test and measures field, especially when you're on PsycNet. So, what I did in this example search was I put a keyword in the test and measure. You can also put an asterisk in the test and measure. And this now is going to be show me any record that has anything in the test and measures. Again, paired with my topic search. So now we have within PsycInfo, there are over 400 articles that have personality theory as a thesaurus term and have something that's a test and measure. And of course, you have the normal options to okay, so Myers Briggs is in 24 of those. You can actually see what are the most common tests and measures found related to personality. Even though, of course, they don't all necessarily have personality in the title. That is an excellent question. That's I know it's one of Patty's favorite things to demo when she's doing the psych info focused webinars. And that trick is a PsycNet special. None of the other platforms, unfortunately, allow you to do an asterisk search, but I find that very useful for fields beyond just tests and measures. So thank you for anticipating that. Great point. Um, okay. So yeah, two main ways to search test and measures on APA PsycNet within the PsycInfo, right? You can search it with a topic word, or you can just say show me anything that has a test or measure. Hmm. Yeah. And again, that's this is one thing that is PsycNet only. Okay. So we'll show these two psych test records that we found through my first PsycInfo example search. Again, I thought these had some interesting fields I wanted to show off during our time together. So this first one has other versions mentioned. There's an original, there's several other revisions, and there's also a translation into Spanish. So, beyond just doing a deeper dive into information about this one test, this can also be a way to boost your bibliography, right? The Psych Info record gave you a link to a psych test record. There's several other psych test records here linked. If I open these up, they will then link back to their own psych info records, right? So that's also a way to sort of gather more potential resources for your bibliography if you're having trouble finding um, the best articles by just searching. The other versions can be a good example. often makes sense to check out the original as well. And they're all just linked right there for you. Um, there's also an acronym available. So, you're able to search either by name or, for example, we just saw that the Myers Briggs type indicator was high ranking as a personality theory test. If you search MBTI as an acronym, that would also bring up those tests that match the acronym. So, again, just trying to make this as discoverable as possible for you. Test description, again, this is our the closest we come to having an abstract. And this description basically acknowledges that there was an original measure and they've adapted it for a new population. In this case, they're using a sample of adult survivors of clerical institutional childhood abuse. Um, so they say that in the description, sort of, why are they using a revised version? And that's why they're studying a slightly different population. That's often a reason for revisions. Going down a bit further, you'll see that information pulled out in population details. This same description of the sample, plus also the specific age range and the countries that were used. The description is a real wealth of information, but if you're like me and your eyes kind of start glazing over and you just want a faster skim, a lot of information in the description is also going to be broken down into more specific fields. So you can see it there as well. In the format, which is just here, you see some more scoring information, Likert scale, 5 point, minimum and maximum scores. So the format field helps with that a bit. Um, so yeah, that was our first measure that we found. Now we'll go ahead and open up Connor Davidson. This one I like. It's an original test. So all the other versions are translations and revisions because this is in fact the original. And you might get a sense like, oh, if this has been developed into all these other versions, this must be a pretty important test in the literature for measuring resilience. So this was a good find. Um, Again, in the test description, it's giving us a lot of information. It gives us this scoring information, 25 items. We've got a Likert scale again. Higher means greater resilience. The description is telling us that they did different subject groups, psychiatric outpatients and clinical trials of PTSD. They have quite a good description about their psychometrics here. And then the final sentence is just basically, this is what we found. It does effectively distinguish between greater and lesser resilience in people. So, yeah, a nice, robust description. And again, you'll see some of those pieces broken out into details again below. So, we're going to, again, past our familiar fields, adult info, a lot more information about reliability and validity. Population details, again, it repeats the different groups that were used to, assess this new measure they were developing. I'll also do a final note of why I like searching by construct. A lot of the keywords and index terms in this case are basically like, this is a test. This sure is a test. It's measuring things. It has factor structure. It has test reliability. There are a couple mentions of resilience in here, but a lot of the index keywords are basically just saying this is a test. Um, so if we were searching again on the PsycTest advanced page, going straight to construct would be maybe the better way to try to find this. The final thing I wanted to point out in our final psych tests example record, is actually up at the top on PsycNet, is we see there's one source used, right where we always find it, a 2003 published article with Connor and Davidson, right? So same publication year, same authors. they're basically like, we're developing a new test in this article, 2003, and they sure did. But up here under source citations, there's actually four that are going to be mentioned, right? So here's the test development. Again, this is considered the source used because this is the article where the test was developed. But after 2003, this record lists three more um, like related or relevant publications in the literature. So it looks like in this year, they applied the test to measure the effects of a particular medication. So they used the scale to try to validate medication effects. So that was sort of a new use. In this case, they're using age relations and professional sports players, again, a different kind of use. And then down here, a group of authors basically did more factor analysis on the resilience scale. So these are not necessarily the only uses of the Connor Davidson resilience scale, but they're considered significant, right? Beyond the first one that developed and used the test, studies that, enhance our understanding of the test or use the test in new ways might be considered here. Again, it's usually going to be PsycInfo links, but in this case, it's a Psych Extra. I believe this was probably a conference presentation, maybe a poster, maybe a little talk. So that's why it's in Psych Extra as a bit of gray literature, not quite peer reviewed, but still considered scholarly. Um, so yeah, again, you might find a psych info field or record that has many, many tests mentioned. And sometimes you might stumble on a test that is important enough, it links you to other tests or to multiple articles. So yeah, basically psych info can be used for psych test discoverability, but it works in reverse as well. Sometimes a psych test record can help you discover, more psych info articles that might be of interest to you. Okay, it looks like maybe no questions. So I'm going to do a literal 2-minute quick demo. Again, this browse trick, much like the asterisk search, is special just for PsycNet users, that we have this browse tool built for psych tests, right? So we saw the first demo, how you can enter psych tests via the psych test advanced search page. Then we had our second demo where we entered using the test and measures field within PsycInfo. This third way is to browse. You can see you can browse by 5 different fields in here. As I said, I'm a big fan of construct. So I'll go ahead here and search for money. So every construct that mentions money is here together. And of course, this is a different experience than scrolling through a results list because it's showing us the names of constructs even before it's showing us the names of tests. So under money attitudes, I'll open this up. It's got 8 inside. This one looks good because it's got a PDF and it also has multiple test versions. So now we've found pretty quickly a love of money scale that's assessing money attitudes. We have the PDF for this modern, or not modern, the newest scale, 30 items. We also have the original, which is a little bit shorter, and an additional revision. So yeah, just a third way you can begin your psych tests exploration is browsing, and especially by construct. So yeah, very quickly, what's new with APA? If you have psych test questions, please feel free to interrupt me. But we've got new searchable thesaurus terms, um, several updates for APA books. For the psych books database, our most recent titles. For the yearly one-time purchase packages, we've basically wrapped up the 2024 publication year, and 2025 is coming soon. And our most recent and our upcoming handbooks, which for handbooks you can purchase e-versions of the individual titles. We have a new journal being added to psych articles early next year. We've had 2 sets of updates for our psych therapy videos database. Again, download the slides, look at the links. You can always follow up with me after if you have some questions. If you subscribe to APA PsycInfo, please check out these research services. If you haven't done so already, they're already included in your PsycInfo subscription. Kind of hard to summarize, but it's a discovery tool that sort of learns and adapts to your own research preferences. And you can just sort of dive right in and get started if you're curious about that. I see something in chat. Okay, Patty's hopping off. Cool. Some final resources for the road. If you're interested in a trial of APA Psych tests, we have that link for you. Also for upcoming webinars. We're going to be doing a version of this one again in October. There's also going to be the EBSCO ProQuest version. So if you have any colleagues you think might be interested in, feel free to share that. Also at the webinars link is Patty's webinars that are going to focus more on APA Psych Info if that's of interest. Some links that are specific to APA Psych tests. We have a lot of training materials for Psych Info, and then these are the links to ones that are focused more on Psych tests. A brief start of semester appeal that, if those of you are sort of known on campus to have knowledge about psychology. If you have a LibGuide, if you have a course page, a Blackboard Canvas course, whatever your situation might be, please consider adding some of these psychological help resources. We know mental health with college students, especially during the time of transition for a new year, can be difficult. Um, so some of these pages, the newish 988 Crisis Lifeline, that's had really good success rate in its early years. And we also have some APA specific pages for crisis hotlines and for sort of less crisis but still important topics. Um, Topics includes everything from friendship to exercise to artificial intelligence to eating disorders, the importance of sleep. At the end of the day, any money we make off of selling or renewing APA Psych tests, that money gets just folded back into our nonprofit organization. Academic publishing is one very important wing of what we do and how we try to help people use psychological science per our mission statement to benefit society and improve lives. But the work being done in other parts of APA to assemble these topics pages, I feel is also worth sharing for you to consider passing on to your campus. Um, on a lighter note, we also have a promotional toolkit that you might consider passing on to your campus. Let the people know that you, as the library, are the one who got access to APA databases. And then finally, at the end, this is a little snapshot of our Learning Commons. You can also call it the FAQ or the help pages. It combines some of these searchable common questions along with a little web form that you can open up and send an email. It's myself and Patty and three other colleagues who answer these emails. We're sort of a small shop operation. It does not go into the void. If you want, you can even address any follow-up questions you might have to me. Again, my name is Marta Soto. I am happy to answer any lingering questions you might have about psych tests or other things in the slides. But if for